back to another episode of Unlocking the Paranormal, the podcast of the spooky, the weird, and the strange. I am your host, Carrie, and I do appreciate you joining me today. If this is your first time here, you are dropping into the middle of the spooky summer series, where summer adventures collide with the supernatural. We all know that over the summer months, families are packing their bags, they're hitting the roads, and heading out to destinations meant for rest, relaxation, and unforgettable memories. But sometimes these memories leave visitors with stories they can't quite explain. Over the past few episodes, I've explored haunted hotels, eerie cabins, unsettling vacation rentals, and mysterious encounters in the woods. And as it turns out, some of the most beautiful destinations can hide the darkest stories. Today, we are going to continue our journey with another collection of chilling travel experiences. So settle in and welcome to today's installment of the Spooky Summer series. Our first story comes from one of America's most famously haunted summer destinations, Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. Every year, thousands of people travel there to explore the historic battlefields, museums, and haunted landmarks. But sometimes the most unsettling experiences don't happen on a ghost tour. They happen when you least expect them. One Reddit user shared that after arriving at their Gettysburg hotel around 10 p.m., they began unloading their suitcase from their car. Suddenly, they heard footsteps rapidly approaching from behind. Instinctively, they spun around, expecting someone to be right there. No one was. The parking lot was completely empty. Inside the hotel room, things only became stranger. Throughout the night, someone, or something, seemed to knock repeatedly, while the room's lights flickered almost nonstop. More than anything, they couldn't shake the overwhelming feeling that they were being watched. By the following morning, they had had enough. Finally, they spoke out loud to whatever might have been there. Just give me a little time to get ready and I'll be out of here. You can stop the knocking and the flickering lights. The response was immediate. The knocking stopped. The lights stopped flickering. Everything fell completely silent. Relieved, they checked out of the hotel and headed to one of Gettysburg's most well-known haunted locations, the Jenny Wade House, where they hoped to find unexplained experiences there. So with this first story, you might expect them to experience some kind of ghostly encounters while on their ghost tour, but rather they ended up experiencing it at night when they were trying to sleep. I can see how they would be annoyed, but if they were there for a ghost tour, I don't know why they weren't a little bit more excited or at least interested that something paranormal was happening to them in their hotel room. So, with Gettysburg being a pretty well known haunted hotspot and travel destination, I would love to hear if anybody listening has ever visited and what your experiences were. You can email your story to unlockingtheparanormalpod@gmail.com, or you can call the hotline and leave a voicemail. The phone number will be in the show notes. Now, as I explained previously, summer is road trip season. Families pack the car before sunrise, truck stops stay busy late into the night, and highways become the backdrop for vacations, reunions, and long drives home. But for people who spend their lives on the road, like truck drivers, overnight travelers, and those covering hundreds of miles each week, the highway can become the setting for something far stranger. For this next story in the Spooky Summer series, I'm sharing an eerie encounter from the open road because sometimes it's not the destination, It's what you see along the way. Now, this story was actually shared just 12 days ago by user Christ is King on Reddit. Now, whether it is true or not is impossible to say, but I think that's safe to say about a lot of these Reddit posts. But according to the person who submitted it, there were 3 eyewitnesses, and the truck driver at the center of the story wasn't known for exaggerating or telling wild tales. For background information before the actual story, the story was submitted to Reddit by someone who said they used to work alongside the truck driver at a food processing plant. Although they haven't worked together in nearly 2 years, the submitter's mother still worked closely with the company's drivers, handling their paperwork, routes, and load weights. According to the post, just 2 days before it was shared online, so that's just 14 days ago, the truck driver, identified only as D for privacy, told the submitter's mother about a terrifying experience he had during a delivery run in North Carolina. Now, this isn't necessarily a story about a summer vacation, but it is a story that takes place during the summer and on the road. So let's get into what happened. The truck driver, referred to here simply as D, had been making a delivery run through North Carolina, possibly in Pender County. After reaching his maximum driving hours and needing to use the restroom, he pulled into a quiet truck stop for what he expected would be a routine break. The restroom was completely empty. While sitting in one of the stalls, he heard the door open. The footsteps that followed sounded unusual, more like someone wearing flip-flops or sandals rather than a heavy boot. Then he heard a voice. "Let me in. Let me in. Let me in." At first, he assumed someone was joking around. Then he saw a face slowly peer through the narrow crack in the stall door. He described the figure as being around 4 feet tall, unnaturally pale, with wet, lifeless-looking eyes, and long, crooked fingers that looked almost too thin to be real. The creature began pounding on the stall door. Moments later, it started forcing the door open. The latch snapped under the pressure, and Dee braced both feet against the door to keep whatever it was from getting inside. Suddenly, the pounding stopped. Instead, the creature slipped into the neighboring stall. From beneath, the driver watched those impossibly long fingers grip the top of the partition as the figure began climbing over. When its face appeared above the divider, Dee swung at it with all of his strength. To his horror, he claimed his fist had passed straight through it, but the creature responded with a deafening screech. He later compared the sound to the shriek of a train slamming on its brakes. Panicked, Dee pulled up his pants and bolted from the restroom. The creature chased after him. Outside, another truck driver happened to be walking toward the building. Before he could react, the creature barreled into him with incredible force, knocking the much larger man to the ground before disappearing into the darkness. Shaken, the other driver reportedly asked, "What was that thing? I used to play football, and it threw me like I weighed nothing." Neither man wanted to say. Because bushes lined the parking lot between the building and their trucks, they walked back together, believing there was safety in numbers. Once inside their rigs, they started pulling out of the truck stop. As Dee glanced into his mirror, he claimed he saw 3 of the creatures standing together near the bushes where the 2 men had just walked. He quickly grabbed his phone and snapped a picture. The 2 drivers stayed in contact over their CB radios as they drove away. But when Dee switched his radio on, he froze. Instead of static or another driver's voice, he heard the same whisper from the restroom. Let me in. Let me in. Let me in. The other driver radioed moments later and asked if he was hearing it too. He was. Concerned one of the creatures might somehow be clinging to one of the trucks, the two drivers passed each other repeatedly on the highway, checking each other's trailer and cabs. They saw nothing. Eventually, they stopped at another truck stop many miles away. There, they encountered an elderly security guard. According to both drivers, the guard looked outside and suddenly muttered, "No, those things are back again." All three men rushed toward their vehicles. The security guard's car refused to start, so the two truckers stayed long enough to help him before finally leaving. Even though D had already exceeded his legal driving hours, he refused to stop for the rest of the night. He later said that he would rather deal with the consequences of violating trucking regulations than encountering those creatures again. When he eventually made it home, he told his wife everything that had happened. She didn't believe him. He even showed her the photo that he had taken. But in the image, there was nothing there. Just an ordinary empty truck stop. To this day, Dee reportedly believes he encountered something supernatural that night. Whether it was exhaustion, fear, or something far stranger is impossible to say. But according to the three men involved, it was an experience none of them ever wanted to relive. Now, whether Dee encountered something paranormal, experienced a vivid hallucination brought on by exhaustion, or something he misinterpreted and was terrified about, it's really kind of impossible to know. Long haul trucking is very demanding work, and fatigue can certainly affect perception. But what makes this account stand out is that he was not the only person who claimed to witness something unusual. So, with that, did he hallucinate everything? Did he really hallucinate two other people that he had talked to and encountered these strange creatures? What is the most likely story? Then there's the photograph. So the photograph showed absolutely nothing, which makes one believe that maybe he was hallucinating the whole thing. But this wouldn't be the first time that something supernatural was not actually captured on camera. If his account is accurate, then whatever he encountered that night didn't just frighten one person, it left multiple witnesses shaken. Enough that none of them wanted to stop driving until daylight. I don't know about you, but I have done road trips before and had to stop at truck stops to take a break, use the restroom, and honestly, they already are a little sketchy in my opinion, but now I'm even more terrified of what I might encounter while there. Let me know if you have ever encountered anything strange while on a road trip. You can email it to unlockingtheparanormalpod@gmail.com or call the hotline. Again, the phone number will be in the show notes, and you simply just call and leave a voicemail. And those are the two stories for today's spooky summer episode. Now, maybe there are perfectly rational explanations for what these people had encountered, but that is for you to decide. I would love to hear your thoughts on these stories. And of course, if you've experienced anything strange while traveling, whether a hotel, an Airbnb, or camping out in the woods, go ahead and share your story with me. You never know, you might even hear it featured in a future episode of the Spooky Summertime series. And if you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to follow and subscribe so you never miss a new deep dive into the paranormal. And don't forget to check out my social media for additional creepy content. I am on TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook. And thanks again for listening to Unlocking the Paranormal. And as always, stay curious.